November 9th, 2022. Buckingham Palace, 1:43 a.m. Palace security guard James Morrison found King Charles III passed out in the blue drawing room, an empty bottle of 30-year-old Macallan whiskey beside his chair, and classified state papers scattered across the floor where they had fallen from his trembling hands. This wasn't the first time Morrison had discovered the newly crowned king in such a state, but it was the first time he realized the full extent of the palace's systematic cover-up operation. As Charles mumbled incoherently about Diana, Camilla, and the weight of the crown, Morrison understood that Britain's monarch was drowning in alcohol, and had been for decades. What he didn't know was that this moment would expose a conspiracy involving doctors, staff, and even government officials, all working to hide the fact that the King of England was a functional alcoholic whose drinking had been escalating dangerously since the day he inherited the throne. But the most shocking part wasn't Charles's addiction. It was discovering how long the palace had been covering it up. The beginning of the end. September 8th, 2022, the day everything changed. Charles's drinking problem had existed for years, but it spiraled completely out of control the moment Queen Elizabeth died and the full weight of kingship crashed down on his shoulders. "I can't do this," Charles confided to Camilla on their first night as king and queen consort, reaching for his third glass of whiskey since dinner. 74 years I waited for this moment, and now that it's here, I'm terrified I'll destroy everything Mother built. Camilla had watched Charles's relationship with alcohol evolve from social drinking to stress relief to dependency over their decades together, but nothing had prepared her for what happened after the crown became real. "The pressure is unbearable," Charles continued, his words slightly slurred. "Every decision, every statement, every public appearance, the entire world is watching, waiting for me to fail, and I know I will. I know I'm not good enough for this." Within weeks of becoming king, Charles was consuming a bottle of whiskey most nights, starting his drinking earlier each day, and requiring increasingly sophisticated cover-up operations to hide his deteriorating condition from the public and the government. Sir Clive Alderton, Charles's private secretary, documented the alarming progression in confidential memos. September 15th, 2022, His Majesty appeared unsteady during morning briefing. Speech slightly impaired. Recommend limiting public engagements. September 22nd, 2022, His Majesty unable to complete scheduled call with Prime Minister due to fatigue. Strong alcohol odor detected by staff. September 30th, 2022. His Majesty's hand trembling prevented him from signing official documents. Excuse provided. Minor illness. The palace was facing a constitutional crisis, and Charles had been king for less than a month. Don't miss this shocking revelation. How the palace recruited doctors to lie. The medical conspiracy. October 2022, Operation Stable Crown. As Charles's drinking became impossible to hide from close staff, the palace launched Operation Stable Crown, a comprehensive medical cover-up designed to protect the monarchy from the devastating truth about their alcoholic king. The recruited doctors. Dr. Hugh Thomas, physician to the king, was the first to be approached about participating in the cover-up. "Dr. Thomas," Sir Clive explained during a private meeting, "His Majesty is experiencing significant stress-related health issues that require careful management and absolute discretion." "What kind of health issues?" Dr. Thomas asked, though he already suspected from his recent examinations of Charles. "The king has developed a dependency on alcohol as a coping mechanism for the enormous pressures of his new role. We need medical documentation that attributes his symptoms to other causes." Dr. Thomas was presented with a choice: participate in the cover-up and receive a £500,000 annual retainer for specialized royal medical services, or find himself excluded from royal medical care entirely. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Provide alternative medical explanations for His Majesty's symptoms. Stress-related fatigue instead of hangovers. Medication side effects instead of tremors from withdrawal. Minor viral infections instead of alcohol-related absences." Dr. Sarah Mitchell, royal family psychiatrist, was recruited to provide psychological cover. "Dr. Mitchell, His Majesty is struggling with grief over his mother's death and anxiety about his new responsibilities. We need you to document these normal stress responses in ways that explain any concerning behavior." She was asked to prescribe anxiety medication that could explain Charles's tremors and disorientation, provide therapy session reports that attributed his problems to adjustment disorder rather than alcoholism, create documentation suggesting his drinking was occasional stress relief rather than daily dependency. Dr. Richard Palmer, royal physician, was brought in to manage the physical symptoms. The king requires vitamin B12 shots for energy management. Palmer was instructed. In reality, these shots were to combat the nutritional deficiencies caused by chronic alcohol abuse. He was also asked to provide flu shots that were actually medications designed to reduce alcohol withdrawal symptoms and mask the physical signs of addiction. You won't believe how they manipulated official records. The document forgery, November 2022, rewriting royal health records. The palace cover-up extended to systematically falsifying official health records to hide any evidence of Charles's alcoholism. Official calendar manipulation. When Charles was too intoxicated to fulfill his duties, his schedule was retroactively altered. Original entry, 10 a.m. meeting with Prime Minister. Revised entry, day of rest, Mans, king recovering from minor cold. Original entry, 2 p.m. state visit preparation. Revised entry, private consultation with physicians, routine health maintenance. Medical record alteration. Dr. Thomas was required to submit false medical reports. Actual observation. Patient exhibits signs of alcohol dependency, including hand tremors, bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, and disorientation. Official report. Patient experiencing stress-related fatigue and mild anxiety following recent bereavement and career transition. Actual treatment. Recommended immediate alcohol cessation and addiction counseling. Official treatment. Prescribed rest and stress management techniques. Laboratory result manipulation. Most damaging were the altered blood test results. Charles's liver function tests showed clear signs of alcohol damage, but the official results were adjusted to show normal values for a man of his age. His blood alcohol tests were never conducted officially, despite staff observations of intoxication during official duties. Don't miss this explosive incident, the day Charles couldn't hide it anymore. The public breakdown. November 15, 2022, the COP27 disaster. Charles's alcoholism became nearly impossible to hide during the COP27 climate summit in Egypt, where he was scheduled to deliver the opening address to world leaders. Behind-the-scenes crisis. 6 a.m. Charles woke up hungover from the previous night's drinking, his hands shaking too badly to hold his speech notes. 8:00 a.m. Dr. Thomas administered emergency medication to steady Charles's tremors and clear his speech, telling palace staff it was preventive medication for travel stress. 10:00 a.m. Charles practiced his speech repeatedly, slurring words and losing his place in the text. Staff had to simplify the language and reduce the length. 11:30 a.m. Just before taking the stage, Charles requested liquid courage, a euphemism his staff recognized as a request for alcohol to calm his nerves. The speech disaster. When Charles took the podium, experienced royal watchers noticed immediate problems. His hands visibly shook while holding the speech. He lost his place multiple times, creating awkward pauses. His voice was hoarse and slightly slurred. He appeared to be sweating despite the controlled temperature. He concluded abruptly, seeming disoriented and rushed. The cover-up in real time. Palace communications immediately went into damage control. Official statement. His Majesty appeared tired due to extensive travel and demanding schedule. Medical explanation. The king is recovering from a minor throat infection affecting his voice. Media briefing. Any observations of unsteadiness were due to new formal shoes causing discomfort. But international media had captured everything, and diplomatic sources were privately questioning the king's fitness for his role. You're not ready for how they silenced potential witnesses. The witness. Silencing. December 2022. Buying silence. As Charles's drinking became increasingly difficult to hide, the palace began systematically silencing potential witnesses through a combination of bribes, threats, and forced resignations. The staff cleanups. Security guard James Morrison. After discovering Charles unconscious multiple times, Morrison was offered early retirement with a full pension and £100,000 gratitude bonus. When he initially refused, he was informed that his daughter's university tuition would be reviewed if he remained in his position. Personal valet Stephen Donnelly witnessed Charles drinking during official state business and taking alcohol to official meetings in coffee cups, offered £150,000 in a recommendation letter for a position with a wealthy private family, accepted immediately after being shown photos of him in compromising positions, later revealed to be fabricated. Private Secretary Assistant Emma Richardson saw Charles's medical records and understood the cover-up, transferred to a promotion in the Canadian Governor General's office, effectively exiling her to another continent. Palace physician Dr. Jennifer Hayes refused to participate in the medical cover-up and threatened to resign publicly, found herself under investigation for inappropriate conduct with fabricated evidence, resigned quietly in exchange for the investigation being dropped and her medical license being protected. The media manipulation. The palace also worked to silence potential media coverage. Royal correspondents received briefings about Charles's dedication to duty despite health challenges. Photographers were given enhanced access to other royal family members in exchange for not pursuing stories about Charles's behavior. News editors were reminded of their publication's reliance on royal access and advertising revenue. The family pressure. Most disturbing was the pressure placed on Charles's own family. William and Catherine were instructed to increase their public appearances to distract from Charles's decreased visibility. Camilla was coached to make statements about Charles's tireless work ethic and perfect health. Even Harry and Meghan, despite their estrangement, were contacted and asked not to comment publicly if they became aware of Charles's condition. The medical crisis. January 2023. The intervention attempt. Charles's drinking reached crisis levels when Dr. Thomas discovered that the king was consuming nearly a full bottle of whiskey daily and showing signs of serious liver damage. Sir Clive, Dr. Thomas reported during an emergency meeting, His Majesty's condition has deteriorated significantly. His liver enzymes are elevated, he's showing signs of alcohol-related cognitive impairment, and he's developed a physical dependency that could result in dangerous withdrawal symptoms. What are you recommending? Immediate medical intervention, alcohol cessation program, possibly residential treatment, and honest conversation with the government about his fitness to serve. Sir Clive's response revealed the true priorities. Dr. Thomas, His Majesty cannot be seen as unfit to serve. The constitutional crisis would be unprecedented. We need solutions that allow him to continue his duties. I'm telling you that he may not be capable of continuing his duties in his current condition. Then we need to find ways to make him appear capable. The conversation led to even more sophisticated cover-up measures. Charles's daily schedule was reduced by 60% and attributed to strategic focusing on priority issues. All meetings were limited to 30 minutes to minimize exposure time. Charles was provided with IV vitamin treatments before public appearances to improve his appearance. Palace staff were trained to intervene if Charles appeared intoxicated during public events. Don't miss this devastating revelation. What William discovered. The Sun's discovery. February 2023. William's intervention. Prince William's discovery of his father's alcoholism came during an unscheduled visit to Clarence House to discuss a family matter. I found him passed out in his study at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, William later confided to Catherine. There were empty bottles hidden behind books, and he was so intoxicated he didn't recognize me for several minutes. William's confrontation with Charles was devastating. Father, you're drinking yourself to death, and you're destroying the monarchy in the process. Charles's response revealed his complete denial. I have a glass of whiskey to relax. That's hardly alcoholism. Father, I found 6 empty bottles in your study. You were unconscious in the middle of the afternoon. You can't even remember our conversation from yesterday. The stress of being king. The stress of being king doesn't excuse being a drunk king. Do you understand what would happen if the public knew? If Parliament knew? If the Commonwealth governments knew? William's ultimatum was clear. Father, you get help immediately, or I will take action to protect the monarchy. I will not watch you destroy what grandmother spent 70 years building. Charles agreed to consider treatment options. But William understood that real change would require more dramatic intervention. The constitutional crisis. March 2023. Government awareness. The cover-up began unraveling when Prime Minister Rishi Sunak started noticing Charles's condition during their weekly meetings. "His Majesty seems unfocused during our discussions," Sunak confided to his senior advisors. "He loses track of conversations, repeats himself, and sometimes appears to be under the influence of medication." When Sunak's staff investigated, they discovered Charles had missed 23% of his scheduled government meetings. His responses to official documents were increasingly erratic. Several international leaders had privately expressed concerns about his behavior. Constitutional lawyers were quietly researching precedents for monarch incapacity. The secret government meeting. Sunak called an unprecedented secret meeting with senior government officials to discuss concerns about His Majesty's fitness to serve. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may be facing a constitutional crisis. If the king is medically or mentally unfit to serve, we need contingency plans." Options discussed included unofficial regency with William taking over most duties, medical evaluation to determine fitness, constitutional changes to limit the monarch's active role, complete secrecy while monitoring the situation. The truth revealed. By March 2023, Charles's alcoholism was known to dozens of people within the palace, government, and royal family, but remained completely hidden from the public through the most sophisticated cover-up operation in royal history. The conspiracy involved medical professionals falsifying records and diagnoses, palace staff systematically lying about the king's condition, government officials participating in constitutional deception, family members enabling and protecting an alcoholic monarch, media manipulation to prevent any investigation or reporting. But the most shocking truth was that Britain was being governed by a man whose judgment was compromised by addiction, whose daily decisions were affected by alcohol, and whose fitness for the crown was being hidden through a criminal conspiracy. Some addictions are personal tragedies. When the addict is the King of England, addiction becomes a national security crisis. Charles's drinking problem wasn't just destroying him, it was undermining the very institution he had spent 74 years waiting to lead. The crown may have been on his head, but the king was drowning in a bottle, and the entire monarchy was drowning with him,